Red Cross, of course, you've
红
heard
十
of
字
them.
会当然各位
They
都听
help
过，
people
他
after
们
a
是
disaster
在
in
灾
particular,
难之
and
后
they helped
提
us with
供
our evacuation centres,
紧急避
setting
难
up
所，
the food, making sure that people had the
提供
bedding,
食物，
making sure
让
that
人们有地
people's
方可以
needs were
睡
looked。after.
那
You see
注
there
意
are
有
many
些人谁需要
organisations
被照
working
顾，
together to be
你可以
able to
看到
help the
许多
community.
的组织一起来合作，帮忙这个社区进行灾后复健或灾难之间的一个抢救。
So state emergency services
昆士兰
helps
紧
people.
急
You
灾
see they're
难处
actually
理
helping
中
this man
心，
out of the water. It's actually only a
可以
practice,
看
it's not
到
a real
这
event.
个是一个
What this is about is
这是
we
一
find that
个
when
演
people
练而已。
are likely to be flooded or have been flooded, they phone us up to say, we need some help to be able to
有人会打
move
电
out
话
of our
来求
house.
救，
Or if it's
帮
in a
忙把家
cyclone
具
or a
移出，
typhoon
或
and the
是
roof
台
has
风
been
来的
blown
时
off,
候，屋
then
顶
the
被吹走
SES, the
了。
State Emergency Services,
SCAS
bring
这个组
tarpaulins
织就
to put
可
over the
以
roof so that when it rains,
帮助他们
people's
把屋
houses
顶
aren't
建
flooded.
回来。
They also help to be able to get the community back on its feet. So if there's been a lot of trees that have been knocked down or there's a lot of infrastructure damage, the SES will help people so they're not as affected by the cyclone or the flooding.
在台风的时候都协助
We found there's a very
非常
important
的
也
多。
for the media, the television,
媒体
the
也扮
newspapers,
演非常
the
重要的
radio
角色，
during a
包
flood
括电
event,
视、广播、
because
报
they're the
纸
people who can
跟
get
社
information
区、
out
社
to
群
the，community.
他们可
The
以提供社
television
区
was
很
particularly
多的
important
协
because
助。
people stay at
电视
home
非常的
and
重
watch
要，
the
因为
television, see
人
all
们
the
会在
images
家
of
里
the
看
flooding
电
on
视，
television.
看
And
到
one reason
电
that's
视
so
上
important
的
is because
洪
in the
水
past,
图。
people have got into their car and driven down to where it's flooding to have a look. Well, what happens in those cases is then
有人看
people
电
who
视就
need to
跑
get
到
out
灾
of the
区去
area
看，
can't get out.
那
Or
就
people
发
who need
生
to
有
get
一些
into the
该
area
要
to
撤
help
离
the
的人没有
people
办法
get
撤
out
离，
can't get down there either.
那
So
要
you have
去
this
协助的
log
人也没有
jam
办法到
of
灾
cars,
区
a
去，
traffic jam.
会造成交
So
通
what the
阻
Lord
塞。
Mayor said was to people, if you don't need to be down there, please stay home
电视就
and
会
watch it
告
on
诉人
television.
们留
And
在
the
家
TV
里看
cameras
电
were
视就
at
好
all the
了。
key locations. We had 4
电
or
视
5
的
television
摄影
stations
机会
covering
在
all the
主
flooding.
要的关键地
That way
区拍
people
摄
could see what，
这
was
么
going on,
样一来，
but
人
didn't
们就
feel
可
they
以
had to
了
go and
解发生
experience
的
it
情况，
firsthand.
不用到现场去。
Another really important
另
reason
外一
that
个很重要
the
的原因
media have
是，
an important
为什么
role
媒体这么讲
in
重
an
要？是
event
因为
is that they can warn people.
媒体可以
If
提
the
供
river
警
is
讯。
rising near
如
particular
果水位暴
suburbs,
涨
then they can broadcast that information.
非常
Media
类似。
people gave information to the radio
媒
and
体
the
人
television
透
to
过
make
广播
announcements about what is
提
going to
供
be
资
happening.
讯，
I
告知
understand
目
the
前
Gauchung
的
City
情
Government
况。
has a radio station
我知道高雄
which
市
you
政
can
府也有
broadcast
自己
information to your
的
citizens.
广播电
That way
台
you're，keeping
可以跟
people
市民
informed.
来做
Very
教
important
育
to keep
跟
people
广播，让人们知道
The
实际的情
newspapers were
况
very。similar to
报
television.
纸的角色
There were
跟
lots
电
of
视也很
photos taken
像
of，the flooding.
它
And
会
that
报道
raises
非常
people's
多
awareness
水
about the
患
impact
的
of the
图
flooding.
片，
And it
以
was
及
one of the
提
key
到很多的影
reasons that
响。
so many people came out after the flood to volunteer
很
and
多
help
志工
clean
参
up
与清除
people
灾
they didn't
区，
even know. So they went to
帮
areas
助
of
这
people
些
they
不
didn't even
认
know
识的
and
人
help to clean up their
帮助
houses.
他们清
And by
理家
having the
园，
newspapers
都
to
是
be
报
able
纸的
to
影
show
响。因为
the
报纸
damage and also show
报
where to
道
go to
了
help
灾区受
really
创的
help
情
the
况，
community to be able to get back on
所
its
以
feet.
让社区可以获得
We
非常好
also
的协助。
communicated with social
我
media
们也
such
会
as
用社
Facebook. This
群
is the
网络，
first
像
time
是脸
that
书
we had done that.
等
We used Facebook
来
because
做
young
通
people
讯，因
younger
为
than
年
me
轻人
use
比我年轻
Facebook
的
all
人
the time,
很
Facebook and
熟
Twitter.
悉这
So
些
we had
Facebook
a
跟
number of
Twitter。
staff who were
我们有
dedicated
些
to
员
sending
工
messages，via
他们是透过
Facebook
这些
and
社群
Twitter
网络，
that
像
people could
Facebook 或
gain that
Twitter
information
来提
through
供
those
资讯，
websites. And we found
或
that
是
was a
网站
really
提供
important and
资
powerful
讯，
medium.
这也是
to get
非
the
常有
messages
力
out.
的一个媒介。
So our Brisbane River catchment has a 13,000
布里
square
斯本
kilometres.
河
Very
的
large
集水
catchment.
区有
Our city is
13,570 平
about
方公
80
尺。
kilometres from the dam. So there's 2 dams
我们
upstream
有
of our
2
city.
个河水
About
库，
half of the catchment
一
upstream of the
半
dam
以上的集
is,
水区都
or
是在
about
上
half
游
the
地
catchment
区，都是
is
在
above
水
the
坝的上
dam. In other
游。
words, if
也
the
就是
rain
说
falls above the dam, then we can regulate the flow by
一
using
旦
the
呢
dam.
水位超
If
出
it
水
falls
坝的
below the
容纳，
dam,
我们就可以做
there
一
is
些
no
调
way that we
节
can regulate the flow. flow.
不过如果不是在
Most
这
of
个
the
区域就没有
rainfall,
办法做调
or
节。
a lot of the rainfall fell above the dam, but some of it
很
fell
多
below the dam
雨
too.
是
And so our
下雨的地
engineers
区
had to
是
try and
在
balance
上游
out
的地区，
of when do we open the gates on a dam to release the water because there's another river downstream that will come in. And it was a very complex technical problem to solve. They did a wonderful job of being able to balance out all of those complex issues. So it takes about 24 to 30 hours from the water to come from the dam down to the city. So if the engineers release water from the dam, then we can let people know downstream about when the water will arrive. And the likely level of that water too. That's a prediction that we work with the community on. This is a picture of our dam, Ivanhoe Dam. It's also our water reservoir. And you can see this is a photo taken during the flood event. The dam was flowing very full at that time. It's primarily used for water supply during dry periods, and then a combination of water supply and flood management during a flood event. And you can see that there is about the same amount of water supply. So half of the dam is for water supply, and then the other half is for the flood storage. These are the water levels in the dam over the last few weeks, or last few months actually. You can see here is over there. You can see this one here is October last year. So there's quite a lot of rainfall in October last year. Then in the lead up to the January flood event, there was a couple of little peaks in the water level, and this is the January flood level in the dam. So you can see it's much higher than any other rainfall event, and it's the highest we've had in the dam since it was built in 1984. We did actually have a drought 3 years ago. So you can see that 3 years ago our dam level was at 17%. It was almost empty, almost dry. And yet in January it went from being 17% then up to 190%. So it was completely full. In fact, both the water supply storage and the flood storage were full. So Brisbane, Australia, is very much like Taiwan. Drought, then flood. And one of our poets said that Australia is a land of drought and flooding rain. It's almost as though we don't have anything in between. It's either no water . So you can see in the flood event 190%. This is just to show the difference between the water supply level, and you can see there it's 100% full up until just after the flood event, and then there was some water released from the dam to bring the water level down so that there was more flood storage in case we had another flood. This is the dam. That's the dam. So you can see here, this is the water being released during the flood event. And this is looking downstream towards the city. There was a lot of water being released at that time because there was a lot of rainfall above the dam. And if there had been a lot more rainfall above the dam, we would have had to make sure we released even more water. So what does Brisbane City Council do? Well, before the flood event, we provide information and advice to residents on preparing for floods. And I'll explain more about that shortly. During the flood event, we provide information on what likely flood levels will be in the river and what residents and businesses can do to minimise the impact of flooding. We work with other agencies and departments and other levels of government to be able to mobilise staff to get people into the disaster area to help them during that time. And after the flood event, we not only help people to clean up, but also there's a lot of infrastructural assets that are damaged. And we work closely with all the other agencies to be able to restore our assets.